Hi, we're the Sage Seeking Sisters. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Stacy. And today we have with us Elizabeth.
Welcome.
Or thank you.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, okay, yes, our honored guest. So we wanted to talk about health, emotional well-being, mental well-being, brain health, and being that you are an expert in the field with your profession and your life's journey. And I also dabble in the field as a school counselor. I know post-COVID that we're really in dire need of resources, of support, because there's so much isolation. And I'm just seeing a lot of people not even knowing what they need, let alone knowing, how to navigate getting any support. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think we are in a time where, even though people, I think, sometimes still struggle to ask for help, it's more acceptable.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think that so many parents, so many teachers have seen kids really struggle because their activities were taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think people are being referred.
Good, yeah.
I think the school system has been doing a really good job of, hey, I'm noticing this child's having a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think maybe you'd want to have them talk to somebody?
Mm-hmm.
So we get,
Yeah,
where I work, we get referrals sometimes from school counselors, and it just seems like by and large, mental health is becoming a little bit, even though COVID was horrible, it was almost like it made it okay to say that you are not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
you're
a very
right.
good point.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because that is kind of the buzz phrase, like it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, we were talking about just motherhood and how, in our parents' generation, there wasn't, parenting styles. Nobody knew about attachment. You weren't thinking about, making sure your children's emotional needs were met. It was more of in survival mode. And at least today, there's that, but there's also so much pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I know statistically, because of social media, there's a lot more anxiety and depression, and because of the comparison, suicide rates are up, self-harm is up. So I'm glad to hear that you're hopeful, at least, that it's okay for people to reach out. That's not as taboo as in, you can openly say, yes, I'm in therapy, or I'm seeking help.
I've noticed with a lot of the clients that I work with that they are strategically saying this may be what was the perception.
Yeah.
And I'm at the point now where I don't care what that perception is. I need to look out for myself.
Yeah.
So they're realizing that they need to reach out to a professional to get help and get assistance.
Yeah.
So are you working with adults and children, or just...
So at Pittsburgh Psychotherapy Associates, which is where I am in that practice, it's not my practice. It belongs to Lauren and Alyssa. But where I'm at, I have worked with younger people, but I prefer to work with adults.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just working with children is very challenging because you really don't just have the child as the client. The parent is the client as well. Yeah. So maybe you feel like you're having a connection with that child and you're noticing that they're improving, but the parent's perception of their improvement is different, so you see them obviously in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just prefer to work with adults because sometimes I find that adults aren't being drugged there. A lot of times I think when children are in services, they view it as a punishment.
Oh.
And so it's you have resistance in therapy, but then when you have a child that's being brought there, you have even more resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And so with adult clients, unless it's a couples therapy situation, most of the time people are coming because they want to be there and they're motivated.
Yeah. That's, and that's so interesting to hear you say that, because I have the complete opposite experience. I feel like change is possible, right? But I look at my own life and the patterns and the intrusive thinking or the self-defeating habits, perhaps, things that I've had to overcome, takes a long time. And I feel like with kids, we're at least in the school setting, I feel like they're open and they're more optimistic or more hopeful. And I just feel like, I would struggle. So I guess the point is, it's good that you know where your strengths are, or where your comfort zone is.
It could be that you're just good at your job.
Well, it could be that you're very good at yours, because I know you could work well with children and adults.
I prefer adults.
So yeah, I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, because I'm typically an optimistic person, but I just feel like we're kind of in a national crisis with stuff, because the random acts of violence, this is, historically never known before. There's always been cultural wars and religious wars and, national alliances and things like that. But this random act of violence that I think is directly connected to mental health, despair, or things gone, unseen, or because I feel like even in the school system, I know people are like, yeah, we kind of don't know what to do with this. And then there's people who are afraid of liability, and I don't know.
I don't know that it's trickled down maybe to the people that need it the most.
Yeah.
So I feel like, some of the things that you're talking about, where someone does something and they're like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this person did this. Or, the other situation where they're like, oh yeah, that person, I'm not surprised at all that they did that. We saw all the warning signs.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if I'm hoping that trickle down effect will occur where, the everyman is now seeing mental health as important and having access to that, and, it becoming more acceptable to the point where people who maybe would be resistant to it, or maybe are, they fall through the cracks, or they don't have a support system that would push them to do that. I'm hoping that, the more acceptable it becomes, that will eventually,
and the less stigma, because I was even talking to a supervisor around abuse, and that men can be abused as well, but because there's so much shame in reporting or getting support, and and I know depression in men looks different than in women, and whether it's workaholism or whatever, it's just I mean, we have so much more understanding and research and awareness today, but I feel like we're also in such need. I think it is our culture of isolation. Like the blue zones, they talk about how so many communities that thrive where people live well into their hundreds with quality living, they're connected, they're walking, they're, whether it's they're eating whole food or whatever it is, they have a sense of purpose. And I feel like, our first world country is like our values are kind of skewed now, but maybe it's a day of reckoning, right? Where it's forcing us to dig deeper.
So is there anything, of course you have clients, everybody's going to be different, your treatment's different for them, but is there maybe like a couple general things that you could share with everybody that could do to help them, like they could do?
Yeah, sure. So whenever I'm working with clients that have anxiety or depression, one of the first things I always recommend is just practicing coping skills. And if you don't have coping skills, being real intentional about, okay, I'm going to read about, mindfulness, or I'm going to read about, box breathing, or, there's a book, and I think it has like cards with it too, called Cards Against Anxiety. It's really short. Each page takes you I would say less than a minute to read. And I tell people you need to make that a part of your routine. So, and I said this especially with parents, because kids need to practice these so that it becomes reflexive. So a lot of people's responses to things are their reflexive response, which is unfortunately is not healthy. So I'm reaching out for alcohol, or I'm reaching out for, food, even though I'm not hungry. What we want people to be able to do is to have these coping skills to be so ingrained that is the reflexive response. So you don't fall into patterns that are ultimately not going to be more healthy. When you grab, a substance, or you are scrolling, or you're shopping, yes, it momentarily feels better, but long term it has consequences, and you come back and you still have that feeling. So if you're practicing things like mindfulness, which helps you to be less judgmental and less critical, which I think a lot of us really struggle with, especially mothers, like, oh my gosh, am I being a good mom? Am I being a good employee? That being I'm paying attention on purpose with purpose, which allows me to flex that muscle of I'm not judging right now. I'm not being critical right now, which helps me to accept myself. So the number one thing that I think that people need to do is to practice coping skills so that when these feelings come up, sadness, depression, worries, you take care of yourself in really loving ways. So just like you teach your kids how to brush their teeth, kids need to help with the coping skills. Like they're not going to be like, I'm going upstairs to box breathe. Like, no, like you have to make it a part of their daily routine. Ritual. Like, hey, we're going to brush our teeth and then we're going to read a story. And you know what? We're going to practice this new coping skill for a second. Won't you tell me how you felt before and after? And if that helped, then let's do it again. And if not, let's try something else, you know, because the more that they see that it works, the more they're going to do that instead of throw a chair.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Or throw anything. Yes.
Yeah.
So what exactly is box breathing?
So, and Stacey could walk you through this too. It literally is just...
Brene Brown actually teaches like the Navy SEALs, like the CIA. Like, this is like big stuff that, you know, under high stress, pressure jobs people are using.
Yeah.
So yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just, you can make a box if you want, but it's breathing in, holding to a count of 4, and then breathing out. And then you just start the whole process again. And you need to do that, you know, 10 or 12 times. I think a lot of times children and adults get frustrated because they're like, I did the coping skill and I don't feel better. I don't think it works. And it's like, well, it doesn't work because you need to do it at the earliest sign of warning signs. People sometimes will use it when they're at like a 10, and it's like, it's not going to really do much. But if you figure out what your beginning, your middle, and your end kind of warning signs are, and you implement it early enough, you're going to feel better. It's not going to take those feelings away. Right. And that was the thing that I was super angry about finding out, because I thought if I use a coping skill, well, then my worries will go away. Yeah. Or my sadness. Like, no, you're still going to have to deal with it. It's going to make it bearable.
Yes.
So what are some of those early signs too that people can be mindful of?
So everybody's are different. And that is kind of a part of the discovery, something that you should be talking with your counselor, something that we should be talking about with our kids is like, hey, you know, when you had that situation yesterday with your friend and you were getting angry, what did you notice about your body? You know, were you, you know, clenching your fists? Was your voice starting to raise? Did you feel your stomach have kind of knots? For me, this is so bizarre, but I will turn my tongue to the side. And I didn't realize this until I was like 42 years old. I was in the car, I was driving, and I'm like, why is my tongue turned to the side? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my body telling me that I'm nervous right now. You know? And so you got to implement that coping skill.
Drop down to your body. Yeah. That's so true. Yep. Because I feel it in my chest, and I start to shake. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting triggered.
I think I feel it like here at times, and I'm like...
Yeah, but it is, and nobody's teaching you to be so aware of what's going on in your body. But that's your nervous system, and that's like the compass. I mean, that's your alarm system. Like, okay,
I think schools are doing a better job. Like, I don't ever remember anyone, you know, sitting down with me and saying like, you know, you're having a hard time. Maybe you should try this. Yeah, you know, or for someone to ask me like, you're worried. Where do you feel you're worried? Like, I think schools are doing a much better job, especially with school counselors. Yeah. And, like, I know my daughter at her school, they have, I think it's like a class or something that they come in like once every couple weeks, and they're like, hey, we're going to talk about coping skills. We're going to talk about emotions and, and I think that's, you know, that's what kids really need.
They do.
And they are doing that too, because my son had a paper that he had filled out on things he could do to cope. So I hung it on the fridge. So it's a reference point.
Yes, right. My girlfriend was just telling me in her district, they have like a little summer camp, and it's like emotional astronauts to just be aware. But yeah, I love it. I love it. And I know for myself, like that feeling, like you said, I feel like a lot of my life I ran with distractive or even, you know, self-sabotaging behaviors because I didn't want to feel the depth of the hopelessness or the despair, because it is so overwhelming and scary. But like, you know, when you go through that, it passes. The feelings pass. Yeah. And I just was told recently too, and I loved this, that congratulate yourself. Because that's an accomplishment. Yeah. Like that you were able to get through those horrible feelings. Yeah. Well, is there any advice you would give to somebody who is feeling like, you know, they don't know who to reach out to, or they're feeling alone in their pain?
Well, I guess that's kind of maybe a two-part. First is to look and see if there's anyone in your social network that maybe you're not thinking about that would be a good ally. You know,
trusted.
that's somebody that, you know, I think a lot of times moms especially are so used to taking care of other people that we forget to take care of ourselves, even though like self-care is such a, you know, a cliche, I think at this point. And even as therapists, you know, always talking about the importance of self-care, but it's like, okay, so I still have to work. I still have to take care of my children. Like there's a lot of things going on here.
Yeah.
So I would say, maybe think about the people that you help. I bet those people would probably be willing to help you, especially if you're like a people pleaser and you're constantly, you know, being that go-to person for your friend. Like it's okay to call somebody up that you've been there for and say like, hey, can you just listen to me for like 5 minutes? I just need to vent. And then Psychology Today, right? Go there, type in, you know, you don't even have to talk to anybody. Type in, you know, the zip code and read the bios. You know, and get to know people. They have it on there where you can search insurance. And, you know, take a chance because you might be able to find somebody who could support you really well.
I actually heard there's an app. This is kind of bizarre, but they said that it's starting out to be pretty effective. It's called Happy, HAPPI, and it's artificial intelligence. That it's just like to be like the, you know, like the 911 if you're just feeling desperate, and to kind of talk you off, you know, the ledge per se, but like real people with, you know, the disposition and the facial expressions and the things to say. And I thought, my God, you know, that's what we need.
Especially for people who don't feel comfortable with maybe some other options.
I like that, asking for help. You know, I come to you.
and you.
We need each other.
That's
it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.
Definitely share. Important stuff here.